I still remember standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie on the morning of my wedding. My heart was pounding not from nerves, but from pure happiness. I had found love again after years of believing it was not meant for me. Linda was everything I had hoped for. But her daughter Zoe, 17 at the time, did not come to the ceremony. She claimed she had finals to study for. Yet something in the way she looked at me the week before told me there was more to it. I had no idea that girl would spend the next 3 years trying to destroy everything. Before we dive deeper into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Stick with me until the end, because what Zoe did next taught me the hardest lesson about love, dignity, and the price of truth. My name is Marcus. I was 32 years old when all of this happened, working as a construction engineer at a firm in Portland, Oregon. My first marriage had lasted 4 years before it crumbled. My ex-wife had been having an affair with a coworker for almost a year before I discovered the truth. The betrayal nearly broke me. I spent 2 years after the divorce focusing entirely on my career, convincing myself that romantic love was simply not in the cards for someone like me. I built walls around my heart and thought they would stay up forever. Then I met Linda at a company event. Our firm organized an annual gathering for employees with children, and even though I did not have kids, I attended to support a colleague who was presenting. Linda worked as the head accountant in our finance department. She was sitting alone at a table near the back, and something about her quiet smile drew me in. We started talking and did not stop for 3 hours. Linda had been divorced for 5 years. Her ex-husband Derek had walked out on her and their daughter Zoe when Zoe was just 12 years old. He left for another woman he had met online, someone younger who lived across the country. Derek barely kept in touch after that. He sent birthday cards occasionally and called on holidays, but he was essentially a ghost in their lives. Linda had raised Zoe alone, working long hours to provide everything her daughter needed while trying to heal from her own heartbreak. We dated for a year and a half before I proposed. During that time, I tried my best to connect with Zoe. I invited her to get ice cream with us, asked about her classes, bought her thoughtful birthday presents. But Zoe remained distant. She was polite enough when her mother was watching, giving short answers and forced smiles. Yet whenever Linda left the room, the temperature seemed to drop. Zoe would not look me in the eye. She would suddenly become absorbed in her phone or find an excuse to leave. Linda assured me that Zoe just needed time. She explained that her daughter had taken Derek's departure incredibly hard. For months after he left, Zoe had waited by the window every evening, convinced her father would come back. That hope eventually turned to anger, then to a kind of cold resignation that settled into her personality. Linda believed that once Zoe saw how much I cared, she would eventually warm up to me. Our wedding was small and intimate, held at a vineyard outside the city with only close family and friends in attendance. Zoe's absence hung over the day like a shadow. Linda tried to hide her disappointment, but I could see the pain in her eyes when she glanced at the empty seat reserved for her daughter. I told myself it would get better with time. 3 months after the wedding, I moved into Linda's house. The first signs of trouble appeared almost immediately. Little things at first so small I questioned whether I was imagining them. My shoes would end up outside on the porch after a rainstorm soaking wet. A television program I had been recording mysteriously got deleted. When Zoe cooked dinner, she would make exactly 2 portions, enough for herself and her mother, leaving me to fend for myself. I did not mention any of this to Linda. I told myself these were normal growing pains, the expected friction when a stranger enters a teenager's home. I did not want to create conflict between mother and daughter. I figured if I remained patient and kind, Zoe would eventually see that I was not the enemy. Then one evening I came home early from work and heard voices in the kitchen. I paused in the hallway, not wanting to interrupt. That is when I heard Zoe say something that cut straight through me. "Mom replaced Dad pretty quickly, did she not?" Linda's voice was gentle but firm as she explained that Derek was the one who had abandoned them, that she had waited years before even considering dating again. But Zoe was not interested in reason. At least Dad did not pretend to love us, she replied. Her voice was ice. I stood frozen in that hallway, my chest tight with pain. But I made a decision in that moment. I would prove Zoe wrong through my actions. I would be so consistently loving, so patient, so present, that eventually she would have no choice but to see the truth about who I really was. I had no idea how wrong I was. A year passed after the wedding, and Zoe left for college at a university in Seattle about 3 hours north of Portland. For the first time since our marriage began, Linda and I had the house to ourselves. Those months were some of the happiest of my life. We fell into easy rhythms together, cooking dinner side by side, taking weekend hikes in the Columbia River Gorge, talking late into the night about our dreams for the future. Linda started bringing up the possibility of having a baby. She was 41, and we both knew time was not on our side. But the hope in her eyes when she mentioned it made my heart swell. I wanted nothing more than to build a family with this woman who had given me a second chance at love. Whenever Zoe came home for visits, though, the warmth drained from the house. She had a way of positioning herself between me and her mother, both physically and emotionally. She would sit in the middle of the couch so I could not sit next to Linda. She would steer every conversation toward memories of her childhood, pointedly referencing her father at every opportunity. Remember when Dad used to take me fishing at that lake, she would say. Remember how Dad always made pancakes on Sunday mornings. Remember how happy we were before everything changed. Linda would grow quiet during these moments, lost in memories of a life that no longer existed. I noticed how these trips down memory lane always seemed designed to exclude me, to remind everyone in the room that I was an outsider who did not belong. In the second year of our marriage, a new colleague named Stephanie transferred to my project team. She was friendly and outgoing, the kind of person who organized team lunches and remembered everyone's birthdays. She would occasionally text me after hours about work deadlines or to share relevant articles. Nothing unusual, nothing inappropriate, just normal professional communication. One weekend when Zoe was visiting, I left my phone on the kitchen counter while I went to take a shower. When I returned, Zoe was standing there holding my phone, her eyes scanning the screen. "Who is Stephanie?" she asked loudly, ensuring her mother heard from the next room. "She texts you a lot." Linda walked in, a question in her eyes. I explained calmly that Stephanie was a coworker on my team. I showed them both the messages, which were entirely about project timelines and upcoming meetings. Linda nodded, satisfied with my explanation. But I caught the look on Zoe's face. There was something there, a glint of calculation that made my stomach turn. Over the following months, strange things began happening. I learned later that Zoe had been systematically constructing a case against me, but at the time I had no idea what she was doing. She drove down from Seattle one afternoon under the pretense of surprising her mother at work. But instead of going inside, she waited in the parking lot with her phone until she saw me leaving the building with Stephanie. We were walking to our cars after a meeting, nothing more but Zoe captured photos that she later used as evidence of something sinister. Anonymous emails started arriving in Linda's inbox. Someone claiming to be a concerned friend alleged that her husband was having an affair. The messages were vague but persistent, arriving every few weeks with increasingly urgent warnings. Linda showed them to me, confused and worried. I was equally baffled. I had no idea who would send such things or why. Then came the phone calls. Someone would call the main office line and ask to speak with Marcus's wife in a mocking tone that made the receptionist uncomfortable. Word spread through the office quickly. Colleagues started giving me strange looks. Conversations would stop when I entered the break room. Linda began asking about Stephanie more frequently. She would casually mention having seen her name on my phone, or wonder aloud why she had to text so often. I always offered my phone for Linda to look through. I had nothing to hide. But I could feel trust eroding slowly, like water wearing away at stone. One evening in late fall, Linda had to travel to San Francisco for a 3-day conference. I was home alone when I heard a key turn in the front door. Zoe walked in without any advance notice. She did not bother with pleasantries. She stood in the living room and looked at me with an expression of pure contempt. "I know what you are doing," she said. "I know you are cheating on my mother. You are exactly like my father." I was stunned. I asked her what she was talking about. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Inside were the photographs from the parking lot printouts of the anonymous emails, a timeline she had constructed of my supposed suspicious behavior. She had even written down statements from a friend who claimed to have seen me having dinner alone with Stephanie at a restaurant downtown. I tried to explain. That dinner had been a team celebration after we landed a major contract. There had been 5 of us at that table. But Zoe was not interested in the truth. "You have 2 choices," she said, her voice cold and steady. "You can confess to my mother that you have been having an affair and leave voluntarily, or I will show her everything I have collected and destroy whatever trust she has left in you." I looked at this girl, barely 20 years old, and I saw something frightening in her eyes. This was not about protecting her mother. This was about punishing me for existing, for daring to take her father's place. "I will never confess to something I did not do," I told her. She smiled, and it was the most chilling expression I have ever seen. "Then I guess we will see who my mother believes." The confrontation came on a Sunday afternoon, 3 weeks after Zoe's ultimatum. She drove down from Seattle unannounced, finding both me and Linda at home. I knew the moment I saw her walk through the door with that folder in her hand that the storm had finally arrived. "Mom, we need to talk," she said. "It is about Marcus." Linda looked between us, confusion clouding her face. Zoe wasted no time. She spread her evidence across the dining room table like a prosecutor presenting exhibits to a jury. The photographs of me and Stephanie in the parking lot, the printouts of anonymous emails, the fabricated timeline, the statement from her friend claiming to have witnessed our romantic dinner. "Your husband is cheating on you," Zoe declared, "just like Dad did. He has been lying to you this entire time." Linda's face went pale. She picked up the photographs with trembling hands, studying the images of me standing next to Stephanie beside our cars. To someone looking for evidence of betrayal, I suppose it could look damning. "Marcus," she whispered, looking at me with eyes full of pain. "What is this?" I took a deep breath and addressed each piece of evidence methodically. The photographs showed nothing but 2 colleagues walking to their cars. The emails were anonymous and could have been sent by anyone. The dinner was a team celebration with multiple witnesses. I offered to call every member of my project team to verify my account. But Zoe was prepared for my defense. "He is lying," she shouted. "He has been lying since the day he met you. I have watched him, Mom. I have seen how he looks at that woman. He is exactly like Dad, and you are too blind to see it because you are so desperate to be loved." Linda flinched at those words. I watched years of insecurity rise to the surface of her expression. She had been abandoned once before. The fear of experiencing that betrayal again had never fully left her. "I need you to tell me the truth," Linda said to me, her voice breaking. "Swear to me that nothing happened." "I swear to you," I said, holding her gaze. "I have never been unfaithful. I have never touched another woman. Everything Zoe is showing you is either fabricated or taken completely out of context." Zoe exploded. "See? He will never admit it. Men like him never do." "Mom, you have to choose. Either you believe me, your own daughter, who has watched this happening for months, or you believe him, a man you have known for 3 years, who probably told his first wife the same lies." She turned to her mother with tears streaming down her face. "If you choose him over me, I will never come back to this house. I will never speak to you again. You will lose your daughter to protect a cheater." The room fell silent. I watched Linda's face crumble as she processed the impossible choice being placed before her. Her daughter on one side demanding loyalty, her husband on the other proclaiming his innocence. Finally, Linda looked at me with devastation in her eyes. "Marcus," she said softly, "if I believe you, I lose my daughter. I cannot lose my child. I cannot." In that moment, I understood the truth of my situation. It did not matter that I was innocent. It did not matter that I had evidence and logic on my side. I was fighting against something far more powerful than facts. I was fighting against a mother's terror of losing her child and a daughter's years of accumulated pain. I could have begged. I could have pleaded. I could have offered to take a lie detector test or hire a private investigator to prove my innocence. But I realized something as I stood there watching my wife choose between her truth and her daughter's lies. If I confessed to something I did not do, I would save my marriage but lose myself. I would spend the rest of my life as a man who admitted to betrayal. Linda would always look at me with suspicion. I would carry the weight of a false confession forever. And Zoe would have won, not just the battle, but my very soul. I made my choice. Linda. I said slowly, I love you more than I have ever loved anyone. But I will not confess to something I did not do. My first wife actually cheated on me, and I know how that betrayal feels. I refuse to become a liar just to make this situation easier. I paused, feeling the weight of my next words before I spoke them. I will leave so you do not have to choose. I will not make you pick between your daughter and your husband. But I am walking out of this house with my integrity intact. That is the one thing no one can take from me unless I let them. Linda sobbed, reaching for my hand. Marcus, please. There has to be another way. But I knew there was not. I had seen the triumph in Zoe's eyes. She had won the moment she forced her mother into an impossible choice. I packed a bag that night and moved into a hotel. The next morning I filed for legal separation. 6 months later, when our divorce was nearly finalized, something unexpected happened. Stephanie, who had heard through the office rumor mill about the accusations against me, reached out to Linda directly. She had been horrified to learn that her name had been used to destroy my marriage. Stephanie sent Linda comprehensive evidence of her innocence. Work calendars showing team meetings. Email chains including all 5 people who attended that dinner. Photographs from her engagement party that had taken place months before she even transferred to my team. Her fiancé had proposed a year before any of this began. Linda confronted Zoe with this new information. And finally, under the weight of undeniable evidence, Zoe confessed everything. She admitted to creating the anonymous email account. She admitted to staging the photographs. She admitted to convincing a friend to lie about the dinner. She had orchestrated the entire campaign of destruction because she could not bear watching her mother build a new life with another man. I did not want you to forget, Dad, Zoe cried. I did not want you to be happy with someone who was not him. I thought if Marcus was gone, maybe things could go back to how they were before. But things could never go back. Derek had abandoned them years ago. He had built a new family on the other side of the country. He had not attended Zoe's high school graduation or helped her move into her college dorm. He existed only in Zoe's idealized memories, a ghost she had been trying to resurrect by eliminating the living man who stood in his place. Linda called me the day after Zoe's confession. Her voice was barely recognizable, ravaged by crying. I am so sorry, she kept repeating. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you. Please come back. Please give us another chance. I sat alone in my small apartment, listening to the woman I still loved beg me to return. Part of me wanted nothing more than to say yes. Part of me wanted to forget everything that had happened and fall back into her arms. But I could not. Linda, I said gently, I love you. I think part of me always will. But when I needed you to trust me, you could not. I do not blame you for that. I understand why you felt you had no choice. But something broke between us that night, and I do not know how to fix it. I can fix it, she pleaded. I will do anything. It is not about doing anything. It is about the fact that for 6 months you believed I was capable of that kind of betrayal. You looked at me and saw a cheater. Even if we got back together, how could I ever forget that? We talked for 2 hours that night. By the end, we were both crying, mourning the future we had planned that would never come to pass. I learned later what happened between Linda and Zoe. The relationship that Zoe had fought so hard to protect was irreparably damaged by her confession. Linda could not look at her daughter without remembering the lies, the manipulation, the deliberate destruction of her mother's happiness. Zoe moved out of the dorms and got an apartment with roommates. She stopped calling as often. The mother and daughter, who had once been inseparable, became strangers living in the same city. Linda did not date anyone else after our divorce. Colleagues who stayed in touch with both of us told me she had become withdrawn, quieter, less likely to smile. The light that had first attracted me to her seemed to have dimmed permanently. Zoe got exactly what she wanted. There was no man in her mother's life competing for attention. There was no one threatening to replace the father who had abandoned them. But her victory was hollow. She had destroyed her mother's happiness and shattered their relationship in the process. The first few months after I left were the hardest of my life. I questioned my decision constantly. I wondered if I should have just confessed, if preserving my integrity was worth losing my marriage. I barely slept. I threw myself into work and still could not escape the thoughts that tormented me. A friend named Jordan helped me survive that period. He would come over to my apartment with takeout food and listen to me talk for hours. One night when I was at my lowest, he said something that stayed with me forever. If you had confessed to something you did not do, he told me, you would have lost yourself. You would have spent the rest of your life being the man who admitted to cheating. Is that really better than being the man who walked away with his head held high? He was right. The marriage ended, but I remained whole. I could look at myself in the mirror and know that I had never compromised my truth. Eventually, I requested a transfer to my company's Denver office. I needed a fresh start, a place where no one knew my history. The move was difficult, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed. I found a therapist who helped me work through the trauma of both marriages. I learned to forgive Zoe, understanding that her actions came from a place of deep childhood pain. I even learned to forgive Linda, recognizing that her impossible choice was shaped by the same abandonment wound that had twisted her daughter. Healing took time. It took years, actually. But slowly I rebuilt my life. I made new friends. I rediscovered old hobbies. I started to believe that happiness might be possible again someday. The lesson I carry with me from this experience is simple but profound. Your dignity is the one thing that belongs entirely to you. Other people can take your money, your reputation, your relationships. They can spread lies about you and turn those you love against you. But they cannot take your integrity unless you surrender it willingly. I chose my dignity over my marriage. It was the hardest decision I have ever made, and sometimes I still wonder what might have been. But I know in my heart that I made the right choice. A marriage built on a false confession would have been a prison, not a partnership. I would have spent the rest of my life knowing that my wife saw me as a redeemed sinner rather than an innocent man. Zoe achieved her goal. She drove me out of her mother's life. But she learned too late that destroying someone's happiness does not create your own. She sacrificed her relationship with her mother on the altar of her unresolved grief over her father. In trying to preserve the past, she destroyed any hope for the future. I do not hate Zoe. I feel sorry for her. She was a wounded child acting out of pain she did not know how to process. I hope she eventually finds peace with what happened. I hope she learns to forgive herself the way I have learned to forgive her. Sometimes the hardest victories are the ones where you walk away with nothing but your integrity. And sometimes that is enough. The truth does not need you to defend it forever. It has a way of coming out on its own. Your only job is to stay true to yourself while you wait. If you are going through something similar, if someone is asking you to confess to something you did not do, if you are facing an impossible choice between your integrity and everything else you hold dear, I want you to know that you are not alone. The right path is not always the easy one. But you can survive it. You can come out the other side stronger than you went in. I want to ask you a question before you go. Have you ever had to choose between your dignity and something you loved? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is struggling with a similar situation right now. If this story touched you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear these words today. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss future stories about real people facing real challenges. Thank you for spending this time with me. Whatever you are going through, I hope you find the strength to stay true to yourself. The truth always comes out eventually. Until next time, take care of your heart and protect your integrity. They are worth more than you know.